Over the course of the hunt, players' maximum stamina value will drop by 25 points. It may not feel like a detriment at the moment, but let it drop far enough, and you'll soon reap the consequences. However, this is not exclusive to hunters, as monsters can also lose stamina, just under different circumstances. My name is Monster Hunter, and sometimes when a flying or bird wyvern is exhausted, it cosplays as a helicopter. In today's video, I'll be covering fatigue and how it can affect monsters during a hunt. Before discussing the effects of exhaustion, it's important to understand how exhaust and monster stamina works. Monster stamina starts at a predetermined value based on the rank of the quest that you've taken. It is depleted when the monster uses certain movements and attacks, as well as taking exhaust damage from hunters, and recovers either slowly over time, or when the monster eats from a natural food source or meat dropped by the player. Exhaust is a status condition that is built up through successfully landing attacks with impact or blunt properties. While hammer and hunting horn are impact weapons, this isn't exclusive to them, as other weapons have attacks with impact properties, albeit not as strong. Exhaust buildup in the current gen, you'll have to attack the head to see and hear the blunt damage as such. As with other status ailments, it has buildup, and each monster has their tolerances. Initial tolerance is the base amount a monster can resist of a status. Once you reach the threshold, the status is initiated, and its tolerance cap increases, which is called a tolerance increase. Whenever the exhaust status is initiated, the monster is flinched and loses a fixed amount of stamina. When a monster's stamina is depleted, it will then become exhausted. Now we can finally start talking about the various effects exhaustion has on a monster. During fatigue, monsters have an increased chance to remain still, lower base movement speed, reduced or nullified movement options, weakened or detrimental attacks, and become more susceptible to the effects of items. There are even monsters who gain a new attack or ability when exhausted. Monsters are known to move and attack in combat with brief pauses to either pose or recover from an attack. When exhausted, monsters are less likely to perform actions and instead will sit in place. This benefits the hunter, as having free time to attack, set up, or recover can be crucial. Something to note, this doesn't occur for the entire duration, as this tired posture is simply another action that the monster performs. Once the animation is finished, the monster can use any of its exhausted abilities afterwards, even repeating the tired animation. But beware, this also means it can use some attacks. Movement options for monsters are akin to flying, jumping around, running, so on and so forth, and no monster moves quite as much as Nargacuga. It is notorious for jumping around the hunter before attacking. One such movement is its side hop, where it jumps in a semicircle around the player. Nargacuga can still jump while exhausted, but ends up having trouble sticking the landing. Once it recovers, it can use another action, which could be an attack or re-entering the tired posture. While Nargacuga is an extreme example with its side hop, other monsters have simpler actions that are slowed down. One such monster is Yian Kut-Ku. One of Yian's non-damaging actions sees it jump backwards while releasing a small amount of wind pressure. Its speed depends on its current state, with enraged being the fastest and exhausted being the slowest. The purpose of this movement is to make it difficult for hunters caught in the wind pressure to dodge the follow-up attack. However, when exhausted, the movement becomes exaggerated and can be easily punished. Exhaustion doesn't only limit one-shot or near-death attacks, as simple moves can be used but to little effect. Gravios, whom I spoke briefly on in my previous video, is a giant rock monster with fire-based attacks. It can expel fire bolts, fire beams, and fire gas in the area around it. Despite its physical bulk, these attacks make up the core of its moveset, with tackles, stomps, and side bites actively taking a back seat. While exhausted, it loses access to these fire attacks. When trying to use a breath attack, it will only puff out a plume while still completing the standard animation. Physical attacks can be affected too, with charge attacks being particularly punished. Flying and bird wyverns with similar skeletons all share the same animation, where the monster charges forward and snaps at the player or some other variation. Yian Kut-Ku charges at hunters before eventually skidding across the ground at the end. This is normal for Yian, but an exhausted Rathalos will behave the same. Monsters that have chain charges can end up toppling themselves. Lunagaron is one such monster who, upon trying to pull the sick Yui, will lose balance and end up toppling itself. This also applies to Mizutsune and his sliding movement. Whenever Mizu tries to slide, it will end up toppling itself briefly. I mentioned earlier that monsters gain access to new features while exhausted. Two such examples are Zinogre and Deviljho. Now, I haven't tested this in newer games, but Zinogre can pin a hunter while exhausted. This will restore stamina, similar to if it ate from a carcass or another monster. For Deviljho, its bite attack grants it the ability to apply defense down as a result of its saliva, which can be deceptively effective as its turnaround move can swipe at you and cause a light flinch, which you can power through with weapon attacks. Lastly, monsters are affected by traps for an extended duration. In Rise, Diablos will remain in a pitfall trap for 10 seconds, and a shock trap for 8 seconds on initial placement. When fatigued, that time increases to 15 seconds for pitfall traps and 13 seconds for shock traps on initial placement. Traps and flash bombs impede the monster briefly, decreasing in effectiveness with subsequent uses. With Diablos, each time it is trapped will reduce the effective time by 2 seconds, with the lowest possible time being 3 seconds. To recap, a monster's exhaustion provides hunters with time to attack, set up, or heal as it diminishes a monster's combat efficiency through reduced actions. Hopefully you all understood everything in this video. I did as much as I could to research the topic and present it in a way that was less technical as to not overwhelm anyone. Something I love in the comments of my last 2 videos were viewers commenting new information and personal perspectives. If there's anything I missed, don't be afraid to inform me, as my entire goal is to help others, and you helping me helps them too. Either way, thank you for watching. Some monsters will spam attacks while exhausted, and until next time.